Was he the one who had 26 teachers or gurus? The earth, trees, the prostitute, just all kinds of teachers, actually.
I believe that was Dattatreya with
Dattatreya, yeah.
the 26 gurus.
Right. And it's in Eknath Bhagwat. It's a book.
Yeah, well, the mantra in the lineage kind of heritage was Dattatreya. This was given like by God, basically, through this kind of very spiritual figure given by God to him to give, and then this whole lineage originated. The nine Navnaths, I think they're called. But yeah. And again, like Maharaj would say, all of that is in the illusion, but it's just for like, conversational purposes and to kind of know where this lineage came from.
Yeah.
But we don't presently have a lineage holder?
I really honestly don't know. It looks like Siddhar Mishra Maharaj's grandson has been in a lot of the pictures, both in Nashik and in these new places that they're going to, but I really don't know. I have not heard anything or I don't know. If you're asking like who's giving mantra or which is like the lineage guru, I don't know. I'm sure somebody will come to the forefront because just like Ranjit Maharaj said, he had to step forward because people were putting pressure. Hey, our children, we need we need you. We need somebody to teach our children and this and that. That was kind of the story of Ranjit Maharaj that he said. Which you can Google this of like, he came forward and said, okay, this is because his guru, Siddhar Mishra Maharaj, his daughter, or I think it was daughter or granddaughter, somebody wanted to take mantra and be initiated. And then, like I said, the ashram people were kind of putting a little bit of pressure that, we need somebody here. So then he came. Same with Ramakant Maharaj. After Ranjit Maharaj left the body, Ramakant Maharaj tells the story of the same kind of thing. The folks from the ashram, they came to him and they said, we need this for our children. So there will be somebody who's coming in this way. And again, all of that is in the illusion, and it's just for the, I don't want to get to, because I know Maharaj really didn't like to go deep into like the stories or the stories basically behind all these different things going on.
Because the stories is all the illusion story.
Exactly. Trish, what happened to your name? It's like a crazy Z.
I have no idea. I took my computer in to get it fixed because I have a contract with Best Buy and I was having issues with it anyway. I guess I have a new name.
Like,
I think the universe is playing games with you, Trish. Name.
I've given up my identity. I now have an abstract identity.
It's a good way to take it. Getting erased, Trish.
Yeah, instead of God, it's a 10-digit number. That's how people won't worship you.
No one will ever be able to call you by name, that's for sure.
It wasn't my idea.
So should I start with something?
Sure.
Um, I was just reading something about we're not to deny the reality of the duality. That could see it as a play, or a display. But I just noticed today in my contemplations that the one time that I was doing neti, sort of a type, I wasn't consciously doing neti, but I just kind of like fell into it. I was saying to myself, this is not what's real. This is not what I am, or this is. I just kept going deep into that, and it got really intense. Kind of was sort of not, sort of intense. I just went deep into it, and then the oneness, a sense of oneness overtook me in a sudden manner, and then I was thinking that that's a type of if I wanted to put a concept on what I was doing, it was neti, or it's kind of like a denial of anything that I can know, or denial of anything that I can know, and anything that I can be my own. And then it just kind of opened up all of a sudden. And I was thinking of mantra in a sense. It's not like a conscious conceptual denial, but it's like putting something, it's denying the energy of the usual momentum to take root or something.
Well, it's inviting the attention of the invisible listener. And when you say that you don't want to deny duality, duality doesn't exist at all unless you exist as I am somebody else. Then there can be otherness. But there is actually no duality whatsoever unless you're identified with a body form. And when you say, okay, I'm this body, then that's the point from which other things can be perceived, basically, or part of. Like, I'm here, this is there, this is me, that's this. But there is no duality at all. Duality is absolutely illusion based on that just I, the sense of presence that then identifies with the body and says, the I is this, I is me. So, and the mental exercises, I think much nicer is, if there's going to be any exercise at all, almost like if you ever go to the beach and you see people and they have the little metal detectors and they're going and they're sifting the sand, looking for the metal, like looking for gold and all this kind of stuff. Well, do that with your own selfless self. Sift through all the things that are going on and remain with your selfless self. That's the treasure. That's the greatest treasure. And all of this that's going on out here is just the sand that's just brushed away to remain and reveal the treasure, the selfless self. So there's not a matter of neti or not, I am not this, I am not that, because I am not. So when I am not, then there can't be anything else. Duality is gone. And the only way that I can say I am in the sense of otherness is when I identify with the body and then the mind that tells me I'm this body and these are other objects in this room or whatever. But when you identify and just remain with that presence, like Nisargadatta Maharaj says, remain with the I am. Sift through all this that's going on and remain with the sense of presence. Even if it's small in the moment, just dive into that sense of presence. The sense of presence will grow because naturally you'll be paying more attention to your selfless self in that thoughtless reality rather than out here with all these things that are just there to basically distract you from yourself.
Yeah, I was getting a strong sense of, I guess I would call it selfless self for a little while. When I'm feeling that, it feels like it's so definite that it's almost like not going to go away. But I know, but also I know it will because I will go back into concepts. But
But just again, don't know that if you're sifting through on the sand and you find the gold, then you're going to dig where that hole is. Okay, I found this gold. Now I'm going to dig. I mean, you don't know it's gold, but you're using metal detectors and you sifted through all this sand, all the worldly objects that are coming around. But then the metal detector starts going crazy, beep, 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 beep. And that's just like when you start paying attention to yourself. Now that you've found this place with yourself, dig deep in that spot and remove all this other things. You don't really have to go anywhere else, correct? If your metal detector has gone off, if selfless self, you've invited attention and now you start to feel that sense of presence, you dive and dig deep.
And let
there and
sort of like
let
it do the elimination, or
exactly. Because every thought takes you away from yourself. That's the whole, like if you're in the absolute thoughtless, then you don't know that you're thoughtless. As soon as you identify the fact that I have no thoughts, then there's an I that has no thoughts. So there should just be nothing, which is the true state. Anything that arises on that nothing should just be brushed aside and paid no attention. And after a while then, when you see the world as the mirage that it is, you no longer beg for water in it.
Yeah, I can get a sense of that right now, what you're talking about.
Yes, yes. Try very hard to not use mind. Think of mind as something that's to be used. I think Maharaj gave a very good example, like pickle. You don't put all these pickles on the sandwich. It ruins the sandwich. You use very lightly, very sparingly do you use mind. And usually mind is just like, well, okay, I'm going to put these clothes out for tomorrow. Okay, I'm going to work and I have to pay attention to road signs and such, and I have to, look for traffic. And I'm using mind and I'm using body and such, but I'm not like impressing that. And then I can sit when I'm not having to do anything and just be with my selfless self. And even while I'm doing activities, the activities are happening, but you're remaining with your selfless self. And just like Maharaj uses the example of when you're sick, everything that you do is in the sick state. You're sneezing, a nose is running and such. You're making dinner, you're in the sick state. You're taking a bath, you're in the sick state. You're driving to work or you're working, you're in the sick state, because that sickness is that kind of background on all these activities. Well, when you think of it like this and you say, okay, well, selfless self, no matter where I am, I'm in that selfless self. Selfless self is everything. It's the background of all these things that are occurring. So I don't need to pay attention to those things that are occurring, other than, like pickle, just briefly take, okay, I'm thirsty, I pull some water, okay, I'm good. Every time the thought comes to use mind, nonsense. That's what I would definitely, every time, because as soon as you're trying to think and process this thinking, instead just recognize, oh, there's an I. And it's not just I. There's an I that's wanting to kind of take birth. And I know mantra erases that I very quickly. And see, this is true reality. Once you start using this as your daily walking, your day, you use it and you remain with yourself, you will begin to see, wow, it's not that I have to remain with myself. That's really the reality. And then you're impressing, and like Maharaj has said, you're pleasing selfless self. You have the bhajans, and you have the listening to masters, and you have in satsang, and you have, you're reading or something, and you're reading the reader rather than reading the page. You're sitting there, you're reading this book, but that sense of presence is very strong, almost like you are watching you read this book. It's so strong.
I have to admit, I do the mantra as much as I can remember, which could be more often, definitely. But I think part of the reason maybe that I don't remember more often is I don't often I'm doing it, and I'm doing it with a sense of self that I'm doing it, and
In
I'm
the
not.
beginning, yes, it's a
And
deliberate act.
And sometimes I get it where it's connecting me to self with self, but other time or largely it doesn't directly connect me with self with self. So
Where you have to concentrate on the center of concentration that's observing the mantra running naturally. And just discard all these activities and all this kind of stuff. And when you say, oh, I think I'm not doing the mantra or whatever, then that's the time. Okay, we're back to mantra. And it just, in the beginning, yes, Maharaj has said it is a deliberate act. But right now it's because you believe that there's someone who's an actor, that you're acting through this body form, that you're believing that I am doing this mantra, rather than that concentration on the concentrator that's listening to the mantra as it's running naturally. You start listening to the mantra and paying attention to the listener that's listening to the mantra. That center, always remain with yourself with self. And knowing it's a reality. You know, that's really the key, is to know it is absolutely, that is the reality. And it's like, you know, whatever you think of as God came down and said, this is what you need to do to practice this way, and you will attain what you're looking for. You will remove yourself from all this worldly mess, and you will remain in absolute bliss. But then you sit there and you say, well, perhaps I should do this and this and this and this as well, or do this and this and this other than that. The example of baking a cake comes into mind very carefully of, okay, here's some instructions and directions. You come to my house and you love this cake. You say, my God, John, this is a really fantastic cake. So I give you instructions and directions and ingredients and exact measurements. And you take it home and you say, well, John says that instead of chocolate chips, I should use Hershey's chocolate bar, but I'm going to use chocolate chips instead. And instead of 1 cup of flour, I think I'll put 1.5 cups of flour. And all these things that you're doing, then you taste the cake and you say, my God, this cake is terrible. It's not, you know, his directions are off. But it wasn't the cake. By the time you're finished baking with your own instructions, you've created something totally, completely different. And the same with mantra, the same with the directions of the master. If you follow the directions of the master to the letter, good. Then, like Maharaj says, it's 100% guarantee. How does he know it's 100% guarantee? Because Nisargadatta came to him and said, follow this. And lo and behold, his self came through. So that's how he can say it's 100% guaranteed. Don't change the cake ingredients if you like the cake. The cake is, Ramakant Maharaj is coming to you and saying, this selfless self is yourself. All these things that are appearing are not. And this is what you need to do. That's it. Don't try to do it yourself. You know, don't think. Just arise as Master says. Follow the instructions of the Master. Because it sounds to me, if you're not following, see, for myself, in my own experience going to India, Maharaj just said this, 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 this. And I was just like, okay, you know, whatever. I'm doing this. I followed every instruction because, you know, I wanted what he had, so to speak. That sense of presence that resonated so strongly and meeting myself without form, in the form of Ramakant Maharaj, was so intense, and you just know this is the reality. And Maharaj says, this is how you do the reality. This is how you maintain your reality. You brush aside all these things. He says, eventually your mind will stop. So, okay, check. Mind has stopped. Okay, now he says, now that mind has stopped, don't pay attention to mind stopping. Pay attention to the sense of presence that's arising. Because if you pay attention to the sense of mind stopping, you're like, ha, I was able to stop the mind. This is terrible. Because then mind comes in and starts giving you thoughts about how well you're doing with the practice. So instead, remain with the sense of presence. Remain with your selfless self. It's very easy because it is the reality.
About a month ago, I had this, while I was meditating in the morning, the image of Ranjit Maharaj appeared to me very clearly. And he said, be supportless. And, I know that such little images or visions like that, they're kind of like progressive steps. But basically, it was really a powerful message for me because it's always looking for, I think the mind, the ego, the small self is always looking for some type of support in one form or another. Even understanding, even knowledge becomes a support, which has to, when he says be supportless, it means everything goes, basically. And that's the cutting edge, I think. Just absolutely being supportless is just really letting it all go. And
absolutely.
Even the understanding, because the mind wants to understand, it's always grasping for something, trying to hold on to understand something or other, and it's just, you give it something, it's going to want something else. It's going to want more. It's going to, like you said, you're baking the cake, you get the message and then you're going to, well, let me try this now. Let me try that. It's just endless kind of experience,
Well, like Maharaj says, mind rebels against mantra and mind rebels against all this spirituality because the truth is mind does not exist. Your power and your attention supply this mind and give it all its power. Mind appeared upon your spontaneous presence and can only present thoughts to you in form where you now know yourself as without support, completely formless. And all false things require a lot of buildup. If you've ever told a lie and you lie to somebody and then they come in and they say, oh, well, what about this and this? And then you have to tell another lie to build on that lie because otherwise it's easy to see through the lie. So then you just start lying and create this whole story, which when you then forget these parts, you have to lie more. And it's the same kind of thing that the mind has to do. You, the selfless self, will catch the fact that this mind, why do we need this guy? What is it there for? What benefit do we get from this mind that is trying to keep us, because mind is producing thoughts as you are a body form, because the mind came along with the body. So it produces thoughts based on you being a body form in a world. When you know yourself in a real sense, that does not make sense anymore. And the more you know yourself, then the mind just doesn't make sense. Mind came along with the body as an instrument to interpret the so-called world this body mind is believing itself to be in. So you, formlessly aware, just I, no thoughts, can be anything. And yet every thought that you pay attention to takes you away and tries to give you something in that attributeless nothingness. And again, all of this that we're speaking about is completely illusory because the selfless self has no movement, has no understanding, has no anything. This consciousness that's appearing and this body that is an instrument into this consciousness that's seeing what's going on is witnessing the dream inside the dream. And all you need to do is know it's a dream. And that's the most you can ever do. And you'll realize it's a dream while you're still inside the dream. Then when the dream goes away, anything other than that was only for a time and it is no more. That was a something that appeared in the nothing. For a time, I believed myself as this body and this mind in this world, and then I believed myself as not this body and not this mind in this world, because I understood my formless nature, but I understood my formless nature inside the bubble of illusion, so that when this body was no more, the fear of dying or being born didn't make sense, because I absolutely knew that I was outside of all of this, that nothing has ever happened in the selfless self. Nothing will ever happen. It's not possible. These things are appearances of higher consciousness, and then all of this is manifesting. And Andrew, going on the journey to realize himself, is realizing the sense of presence, which is only, and that will leave too once this body is no more. So the entire thing is just to enjoy the illusory journey, basically, in peace today. This sense of presence is the I that removes that other I, the I you believe yourself to be. The sense of presence is the I that removes that I. And then you throw away both eyes, as the thorns you would talk about, and you're there. So this sense of presence that you feel, this sense, you dive into this and don't pay attention to the illusory I. And yet knowing that once you know this I and you say, ah, this sense of presence is myself, that I is thrown away as well, because that illusory sense of presence is appearing on your spontaneous presence, which you can't feel because you are one with that.
That's the ultimate, the final reality.
Yes. But knowing this now, in this moment, the activity is as this. You know that all beings are my presence. My presence is everywhere in everything, and all of this is in the bubble of illusion that's appearing on the one selfless self. And that is just one. That there are no others. And in your daily activity, you see this. Because you're not. You walk around the halls or you walk around the outside in the park, and you have no body sense, because the only way you have body sense is when body consciousness through mind, ego, intellect is impressing, this is you and these are others. Once you have no sense of yourself, you're just here. You don't have any kind of local identification anymore. Wearing the clothes very, very loosely. Clothes being this body. The only way they feel tight is when the thought flow comes. I am this body. I need to watch these things. I need to.
So at that point, the illusion, I mean, we talk about the illusion as if it exists, but then I guess
That's not.
the illusion doesn't even exist.
No, none of this is. None of it. That's why it's so beautiful. When you know yourself in a real sense, none of any of this can be. The one formlessness can't be divided, can't speak, can't, there's nothing. And all these things are just, you just know that there's nothing.
That's why I like the example of dream, because a dream is nothing. And, you know, it works so well. Every time I hear that word, it kind of like, it really resonates a lot with me.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Yes, and this body is the kind of telescope into that dream world. And even for a time, you believe that this body is you inside that dream world. But that's why world and consciousness are the same, because the waking state consciousness and the dream consciousness are just consciousness. And they're both exactly the same. So there's no difference between the dream and the waking state at all. And you, the formless reality, are not experiencing waking state and dream state and deep sleep state. These are all things, layers on your spontaneous presence. But you are not involved at all, other than, like Maharaj says, 100 years back, prior to beingness, what were you? And yet, then Maharaj gives the example of the lighter and the fire. Spirit clicked with the body, and you say, I. So, you don't know yourself at all. Then this body form that you click and you say, oh, I exist suddenly. And because the body is nearest to you, you say, I exist as this body. Then there's mom who tells you who you are, and the whole journey begins. But when you know yourself in a real sense, okay, there is a sense of existence. The just I without anything. That I, you are. That you are, that sense of presence. Then this illusory I appears on that spontaneous presence. And when you use this I, the just I, presence, you remove that I, and then just like in every example, then throw both thorns away. You also remove this sense of presence as this I am. And that's when Maharaj, Nisargadatta Maharaj says, go deep into the I am, and all the secrets are revealed. You will know that you are the knower of this sense of presence, but for a time you identify with the presence. Just like Siddhar Meshra Maharaj always says about, in his teaching, it's like, okay, you're not your thoughts, you're the mind. And then you kind of disassemble that part. No, you're not the mind, you're this. No, you're not this, you're this. Because you're really in truth nothing. But these things that have been built, you say, okay, you've climbed this step. Now you're firmly on this step where you understand I'm not body, but I could be these thoughts. Then you move on to the next step. You're firmly planted there. I couldn't possibly be the thoughts. I think in Master of Self-Realization, he talks about where is this I? Find this I. And he goes through all the subtle bodies to realize that the sense of presence is the subtle I, I forget what he calls it, like the supra-consciousness or whatever, is that subtle I, but that you are the knower of. And that's where it flows, like, knower of the sense of presence, not the presence, because that presence can be known. You cannot know yourself because you can only be that. You can't know that. You know the sense of presence that all these things are arising on. But you're the nothing in which the something has started to stir.
So that knower of the sense of presence, is that the fourth body, as he refers to that? You know, you got the gross body, the subtle body, the causal body, then the fourth body, which is the highest you can actually go, because he says beyond, you reach that point, and that's all he ends, you know, like in that part of the book is called Master Key. And when he gets to the fourth body, he says, this is it, buddy. You got to go beyond this. And I can't say anything about it. That's what he says. So.
Yeah, the great causal body is that removal of the sense of presence. Because you know you're the knower of the sense of presence. And anything you know, because he started in the very beginning saying anything that you know cannot be yourself. You cannot know yourself. You can only be yourself. All these things are arising on that spontaneous presence. And again, back to Ramakant Maharaj, the something appearing in the nothing. Spirit clicked with the body and you say, I. And that I came the something. But the nothing clicked, made something. Something dissolves back into the nothing. But the nothing is all there is. There is nothing else other than, and that's why you go back to accept your selfless self. There's no God, no Brahman, no Paramatman, no master, nothing is there. This sense of presence that you feel when you're doing these spiritual things, that you remain with that I am, you remain there and know that all of this appears on that. That's the most you can do, so to speak, do. That's, you know yourself in a real sense. You are the formless reality in which all these forms are appearing. But these forms are not the truth. They can't be, because once you know yourself in a real sense, how can any of that be true? And the instant discrimination is the mind produces, because mind, and Maharaj says this, mind, ego, intellect are instruments that came along with the body. They don't know this. They can't show you. That's where the mind stops. There's nothing that the mind can show you of yourself. And then you can sense this sense of presence using body form. You can feel this. It's a subtle, subtle feeling that you feel, and you are the knower of that sense of presence. It's arising only due to the fact that you're using instrument of body. And then you know you're this sense of presence, this formlessness, formless knowledge, no knowingness, whatever you want to call it, and everything else is gone. And you will teach yourself. You will erase this body idea slowly, silently, and permanently. And once that dawns, that this sense of presence, this formlessness, that, not this, nothing, 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 nothing. Maharaj says, I am not body, I was not body, I'm not going to remain the body. Body is not my identity. Then you say, who am I? Well, who am I? Is this just I without anything, the sense of presence, without identification, without beginning this whole mind, ego, intellect journey, and without any concepts. Because as you mentioned, Ranjit Maharaj says there's no place for these concepts to sit. It's a shelf without shelves. And you're asked to put concepts on it. I was looking at your book. It said it's a bookcase without shelves, and you're asked to put concepts on there. Concepts in the books, but no shelves, just this bookcase. No place for them to be. And that's why Maharaj says the sticky concepts. All the concepts, and Nisargadatta Maharaj says too, the seed. The seed is, I am. I exist. And the I exist then as I exist as this body. I exist, and then boom, 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 boom. This seed grows branches and becomes this whole world, and you're lost from yourself. And then you start to use this mind, ego, intellect that came along with the body to try and contemplate how you are not the body. The only thing you can do is still this mind, ego, intellect, so using mantra, so that you can experience this sense of presence without all this extra stuff, without the commenter saying, let's get spiritual, or let's remove this ego. The ego says, let's remove this ego. I think Ramana Maharshi says it's like asking the thief to watch your stuff. The same thing. You're asking the thief to go help catch the thief. So you're using mind to get rid of mind. But Maharaj says, no, no, no. Mantra. Mantra allows you to erase the layers of presence because the fire is burning bright underneath the ash of illusory concepts.
Sooner or later, I'll figure it out that I have this mind addiction, and I'll just drop it. Just like used to have a drug addiction, and you find out you can live without it, or you can be without it.
Be addicted to selfless self. Be addicted to this sense of presence, this I am. Be addicted to that, because that's the nectar of immortality. Drink as much as you want. Remain there at the fountain, slurping on the nectar of immortality. Because truly, that's the well of bliss. Because there's no disturbance of any kind. There's no you there that's being disturbed. And every moment is spent with yourself, just kind of marinating. I think we talked about that before. Marinating in that presence, ignoring all other things. And that presence, you can sense, like I said, even if it's the size of a dime. In the beginning, if you feel it, dive into that. As something happens in your illusory world, dive into the presence. No matter how small it is, just keep concentrating on your selfless self, diving into the presence, remaining with I am. Because you, the selfless self, inviting the attention is going to be just happiness. Happiness just without any material cause. See, that's the thing. You could be going through good times or bad times. If you're remaining with your selfless self at the fountain, slurping on the nectar of immortality, who really cares? You're unconcerned about good and bad out in the world because you're just soul. There's no need for external stimulation of happiness. But like Maharaj says, the money, sex, publicity, none of these things are needed because your soul is filled with your selfless self.
I was just reading a philosophy thing on Taoism, and the guy he quoted somebody, some wise guy that said something to the effect that he was talking about action and inaction, that the highest state, or something to do with you act by inaction, and by inaction you act, or something like that. It's sort of like, I'm just throwing it out there. I don't know. I guess I should be more clear exactly what he said,
But don't read this. Experience these things for yourself, because these things that are being said are pointing to the absolute truth and the absolute reality. But reading them and contemplating on them is not what they're there for. They're used like a stick upside your head, whack, to keep you with your selfless self. You see, they're not. These are the things that you experience. Experiencing yourself, remaining with your selfless self, you will begin to see many actions are arising spontaneously, but I don't have that sense of doership. So, just like they say, Arjuna out on the battlefield, he can go and do battle, but no one's dying, no one's being killed, no one's doing anything. And he can remain in that, quote, samadhi state without any feeling of himself at all. Unbroken samadhi in the battle. That's what this person is pointing to, that there's action without an actor, that there's absolute stillness in which activities are occurring, but you do not have the sense. You're not taking the touch of the activities. You are remaining at the source.
yeah, that's what I was wondering what your take on that was. That's
the Shiva image, the dancing Shiva, with all those arms. Those arms represent involvements in activities.
Yes.
But if you look at the eyes of the Shiva, there's perfect equanimity. In other words, there's just total presence or stillness in the midst of all those engagements in life. That image from India, it's very popular.
Yes.
Yeah, thanks. I didn't realize that. He's kind of like the, what do you call it, the center of the wheel.
Right.
Spokes are on the outside, and the central part is remained still.
Right.
Yeah. Cool.
And those are all pointing to the experience. Since the experience is kind of wordless, it can't be in words or description or language. These sort of pointings to the experience of remaining with your selfless self, all of these are doing this. That's why Maharaj says, don't look at the words of the masters. Look at when you read it, that it's your story and it's pointing directly. All these masters are hammering the experience of your selfless self that's arising, and how you can possibly kind of describe it to share that experience, sort of, in a way, how this is. You know, instead of reading and saying, oh, okay, because like you would say, okay, when enlightenment comes or whatever, and I know myself the self, then I'll just sit and there won't be any activity, there won't be anything. No, there's going to be activity with an actor. Because this actor is appearing on your spontaneous presence and you're remaining with your selfless self. Everything is with your selfless self. All these things are appearing on your spontaneous presence. Everything that appears on your presence is illusion.
And I think when you have the absolute conviction that it doesn't exist, that it's not true, then there is the stillness in the midst of all that activity. It's just, it's not real. And that's the conviction we're all, yeah.
That conviction is simply remaining with your selfless self and not giving yourself away. And in the next moment, as the new thing is coming, something in front of you is being presented, you remain with yourself and not with this new something being presented. Remain with yourself, not this something that's being presented. And yet, then the actions occur in the stillness, in the moment, and then subside. It's like I don't know what you call it, like something that rises up and then quiet. Rise, like the geysers in the little park you have somewhere, Yosemite, right?
At Yellowstone, they have the geyser, I know, the famous geyser. Yeah.
There you go, Yellowstone. It's absolute quiet, everything, then sudden activity, spontaneous action with a background of stillness. It just returns. Action, back to stillness, but stillness is always there. The action is appearing on that stillness. The action is appearing on your spontaneous presence, but the presence isn't doing anything. You're identified with the presence and not with its sense of doership or this illusory entity that seems to be performing actions when it's a dead body. Take away the sense of presence, take away the presence, and as Maharaj says, dead body, burn or bury. Presence touches with the body, then body has motion and all this. But the presence is just like space. Space using an object in it to move, and then that's it. But it's a background of absolute stillness, not even silence, you can't say, because silence is a concept and can be used by mind. Once again, we talked about closing your eyes and just receding until you've watched the screen of mind and then the void, and then you're observing the void from the place and remain. Then open your eyes and you remain there. Things can come and go, but you're remaining there. You're seeing inwardly as this outward world is being projected on your spontaneous presence. You're remaining inwardly with your selfless self.
But then there has to be continual vigilance. That's what Papaji is said, that they said, how long do you have to be vigilant? He said, till your dying breath, which is that as long as you're in the body, things can still arise. So there is that vigilance of noticing what you're giving your power away to you know, and
Yes.
how you're staying inside. So that never ends as long as the body.
And that's why Balsab Maharaj, he knew this, as Ramakat Maharaj has said. Balsab Maharaj knew this, and that's why he prescribed bhajan, meditation, constantly concentrating on the concentrator as things are arising. You remain with your selfless self. And that's why Maharaj says also, good thoughts are coming, bad thoughts are coming. Choose a thought that's helpful in the moment. Just like the making of the tea, you have the whole procedure to make the tea, drink the tea, and it's finished. You're not thinking about how wonderful the tea was all day long, or thinking about your next tea or any of it. It's just a spontaneous action has arisen, you're doing and finished. And remain with your selfless self, because that's the cool, see, that's the really cool part, is when you remain with your selfless self. And again, we talked about it turns up the heat, seemingly because the world is a projection on your spontaneous presence. And it's based on ideas and beliefs and concepts is how you're seeing and perceiving, and you're kind of interacting with this world that is yourself. It turns up the heat. Like, okay, now your everyday life, you can remain with your selfless self. You have no sense of body, this and that. And then your cat dies, or you get a bank notice that is very bad, or, you know, some kind of bad thing happens, quote, and then there's a pressure of body knowledge. But during that time, if you remain with your selfless self, just like I'll give the example in India with the food poisoning. Okay, I'm doing mantra, so to speak. Everything's nice. Everything's all selfless self, love, love, love. Everything's beautiful. Wham, food poisoning. But instead of paying full attention to the food poisoning, this is an opportunity to remain with your selfless self. Body is going to go through what it has to go through. There's some viral thing in the body, and the body is going to react. There's a disturbance in the 5 elemental body that has nothing to do with you. And when you remain with your selfless self, you see this. And as these various things occur on your spontaneous presence, just know, I think Maharaj had said before, consider all challenges and problems in your life opportunities to test your spiritual knowledge. And not test your spiritual knowledge like Ramana Maharshi says this, or Nisargadatta Maharaj says this. Spiritual knowledge in that you're remaining with your selfless self. Master has said this world is absolutely illusion. Something is occurring that looks like I really am in some trouble, but I remain with my selfless self, because my selfless self will see through these eyes that all of this is a mirage and that it's coming and going. But if I give it to mind, ego, intellect, it puts a person in time that this is occurring to, and then the mind, by its nature, tries to figure out a solution to this illusory problem. Okay.
Okay. Thank
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Good, good,
Thank
good.
you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Everybody have a good night.
Okay,
Thank you.
have a good day.